Oh,
You tried.
Man. Yeah,
You
it was
tried.
close. It was close.
And that's all that matters.
I guess. Anyway, hello everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Best of 5 show. My name is Ilan. I am joined here with the main squeeze as always, the ace, the king, the offsuit, the Jurek.
What's crack-a-lackin'?
Steve, we have to be on time today. We have to be on time today because Formula One Practice 1 in Australia starts in exactly 2 hours. So, we have to be on time. I originally thought that the practice started right when our show started, but I got my time zone conversion wrong because I didn't have a patented Steve Ace King Offsuit Jurek schedule to help me out with that. So I made the mistake.
That's like the one thing I do. That's the only contribution I have to the world is time zone conversion, and you didn't turn to me. That makes me feel a certain kind of way. I'm not gonna lie.
Look, Steve, I feel like you got enough on your. Excuse me, I almost burped. There's a lot happening for everyone, everywhere, every time. So I didn't want to put this burden on figuring out Australia time zones for the sake of Formula One. Speaking of which, that's going to be tough to watch this weekend, man. The race is at like midnight.
Sleep is for the weak.
It is for the week. You know what else is for the week, Steve? Fighting Game Show podcast, and that's why we're here.
Now, see, that's for the WEEK, because we talk about the week that was,
I'll give it up. I'll give it up.
There we go. There we go.
Never knows best in the chat goes, that's like your best friend being Superman, but you called the cops instead. That's pretty good.
I mean, like, I'm not saying there's an S under this shirt, but I'm not saying there's not an S under this shirt.
I don't think there's an S under this shirt. You know why, Steve?
Why?
Because I think there's an R.
An R?
There is an R.
Are there other letters that follow that R?
Yes, and you say your only contribution to society is time zone conversion. It is not, Steve. You have another very important contribution to the entire world, because the entire world listens to this podcast. Don't fact check me. Don't fact check me. It's true. Rock Bogart in the chat. What's up? But Steve, you know what it is. It's time for you to rip that shirt up and reveal the R shirt underneath, because I think it's time for you to give us the weekly recap. Say roll it.
Roll it.
Damn it, the audio's not working. Anyway, you keep going. You go. I got it.
Okay, so let's talk about an event that has quickly become a pretty big deal, especially in the DBFZ scene. Bum's Birthday Bash. He got nearly 200 players to play some Dragon Ball. And not just 200 players from around the block. You had some real good international representation there, including 3 of the top 4 finishers being from France. The champion among them, Wawa, coming in, taking the cookies, dipping them in our milk, knocking off Sonic Fox in the grand final. Actually had to come through losers, so got Sonic Fox twice in that grand final. Fellow French people, Kasuga and Yasha, rounding out the top 4. But you had some good representation. You had Legendary Pred making it out. You had Cool Kid coming out. You had Shanks coming out. It was a pretty big deal for DBFZ, offline DBFZ, which we haven't really had very much of over the past couple of years. It was not only an event for DBFZ. They had some other tournaments going on as well. Busker Luz getting the win in Grand Blue. Tempest, your Guilty Gear Strive champion. Tamago coming up from Mexico to take the KOF 15 crown. And Chimera getting the nod in Power Rangers Battle for the Grid. Turning our attention to Smash, we had a platinum event on the Smash World Tour this past weekend down in Brazil. It was ultra hard tournament, and it was ultra hard for the Brazilians because they got shut out of both grand finals. Peru's Amida getting the win over Chile's Riken. The Balloons coming down from the USA to round out the podium. Alexio rounding out the top four on the Melee side of things. For Ultimate, perhaps winning the tournament and perhaps winning the best name of the week competition, Sekai Dago coming over from Chile to get the win, holding off Peru's Meet Leo in the grand final. Ferps and Kowalski 023 representing the home nation in the top four.
Now, Steve, how can you? There's player 7 is tied for 7.
That's just how it works.
I feel like that was planned out.
It was fated. They can't fail to get top 8, but they can't proceed past top 8.
Yeah.
That is their lot in life.
That is a very short margin of error, and they nailed it.
So, all right, and that was the week that was.
I did it, Steve. We fixed it. The outro was better than the intro, but we'll get there. Thank you so much for that recap, Steve. Oh, always nice to have a Steve recap out here in these streets. I do want to bring up one thing. Now, camera's being kind of weird. This past week was not short of FGC drama, Steve. Even as far as this week.
It was not.
There was a lot of FGC drama. Specifically, a lot of drama because of social media. And a lot of drama because of miscommunication because of social media. Or so they say.
Is it necessarily because of social media, or does that just happen to be the avenue through which this took place? Because I feel there's a difference.
Here's the thing, Steve. Well, first of all, before we get to the actual one that everybody thinks we're going to talk about, I do want to talk about the bum stuff, because there was some bum stuff, and I feel like it's warranted, at least a conversation, because after Bum's event,
the bum birthday bash stuff.
Yes.
Okay, because if you just say the bum stuff,
Steve, why is your mind always
to specify?
God damn it, Steve.
I'm just saying, for our sake, for the sake of anyone who has the clip button on Twitch, we need to be specific.
Anyway, Bum, the person who had their birthday bash be this very gigantic and very amazing tournament. I got to watch bits and pieces of it. Even as someone who doesn't necessarily enjoy, someone who doesn't necessarily enjoy DBFZ as much, I still got to watch it, and I enjoyed the hell out of it. It was so much fun to watch. The vibe was awesome, right? And seeing how hard Bum has worked to like culminate into something like this was very amazing. However, there were a couple people who said some things, and word got around, right? Steve, I'm just noticing there's Formula One standings in our ticker. And
this
they're gone.
Is what happens when you miss the pre-production meetings.
Yeah,
you miss out on these Easter eggs.
I'm sorry. I also saw the WrestleMania stuff earlier, too. Anyway, Easter eggs everywhere. Anyway, and this is all word of mouth, right? I don't know who. It's a total, like, he said, she said type of thing. And it turns out that I'm not going to mention names, but there was a call on Discord going on where it seemed like it was a bunch of people who are established in the Dragon Ball community were just talking smack and talking down on this event. Is that true? Is that not true? The one person in that call says it is not true, and they were just joking, among other things. And that's one of those situations where, if you're kind of talking down to events because they're not yours or because it's something you don't usually see, I feel like that's kind of not okay. However, the joke thing, that's like the OS, right? That's the option select. Who knows? And it's one of those things where only the people on that call know what they were talking about, and they just have to live with it. If they were being terrible humans, then that's what they are. But word's gotten around, and honestly, needless to say, Bum, after hearing this, was upset, right? And I feel like anybody in his shoes would be upset. So, I don't know. I feel like that's just needless he said, she said type of stuff that culminated in social media. And then, once things get into social media, Steve, as we all know, like we were talking about in the beginning of, or like during the countdown, it's like with social media, even if you're dead wrong, you never back down. That's like the social media decorum nowadays. 2 + 2 is 3, and you meant to type 4, but you type 3, you cannot back down, or else, like, for whatever reason, that's social media. Even if you're wrong, you just have to double down. It's awful. I hate it. But yeah, do you have any thoughts on this? I know I talked a lot just now.
You did. I didn't mean that as a bad thing. I think a lot of times we blame social media for any sort of conflict. Now, there are things that do happen specifically because of the medium, especially, you brought up the joke, the joke OS.
Mm-hmm.
Jokes work when everybody in your audience knows what the tone is, knows what the intent is.
Yeah.
The problem with anything that can be screenshotted, anything that's written down, is that the audience becomes anybody who sees it.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of tone, context, anything like that is stripped away.
Yeah.
So obviously it's not, I mean, there's not a whole lot you can do in that situation, because someone who says that jokingly and someone who says that seriously, it's going to show up the same way in a screenshot.
Mm-hmm.
As for criticism, this is, I feel like there is room for legitimate criticism for an event that runs. Even if, and we'll especially get into this when we talk about NLBC, the passion that an organizer has, even if it's unquestionable, that doesn't necessarily mean that event is immune to criticism.
Right.
And on the flip side, just because you have criticisms of an event that's being run, that's being run at no monetary cost to you, you do have to temper your thoughts on that a little bit. It's not the same as criticizing an event you travel out to, for
Mm-hmm.
example, that you put down a ton of money to go. But again, I feel like there's a line, and it's possible for both sides to be right.
Yeah.
Which which makes everything suck, because and like I said, we'll get into that with the next topic.
Yeah, but I do think one thing does need to be said, and especially because we've been kind of on the receiving end of some of this, and not by we I mean this show, not even necessarily myself. It feels like, and this is not the first time I've seen this in the FGC, and again, it all comes down to that whole the FGC is welcoming type of thing, but it feels like when somebody tries to do something that is already established in the FGC, the people who are already doing that thing or are somehow involved with that thing take it as personal encroachment, right? The world is big enough for all of us to do whatever we want in this community. And it feels like people who are already established in doing something, when they see something new, their first instinct is to talk down to it and to kind of squash it. So while this doesn't happen nearly as much, right? And usually when it does happen, it gets called out very quickly, which is really cool. It still happens a lot, and I think this is one of those examples. So I think it's, and here's the thing too. There is, like, again, if this was a private conversation that then got brought to public, so it's one of those things where it's like, but at the end of the day, valid constructive criticism is never a bad thing. Punching down is the bad thing, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody, when one person succeeds, everybody succeeds. So trying to squash it down is never going to end well for anybody involved.
But I think also there's a line between simply saying I don't think there's something wrong with someone saying I would like X, and if someone else is offering up Y, there's nothing wrong saying, hey, it'd be cool if you offered up X too.
Mm-hmm.
And if everyone jumps in and says, well, what are you talking about? Dude offers the best Y ever. You should be grateful. You shouldn't say anything bad. I feel like some of that happens too.
Yeah.
Where, there have been cases where I've been in the wrong and I've had people step in and say, oh man, he pours so much work into his schedules. He does so much for the community. Like, that doesn't change the fact that I'm wrong in this case.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't change the fact that, I can accept this criticism. But again, I feel like so often we forget that there's a person on the other side, on both sides
Mm-hmm.
of these conversations. And too often we just assume that if somebody says something, it's in bad faith or with bad intentions, instead of somebody just simply wanting to have needs met that aren't being met somehow.
Right. Speaking of wanting needs to be met that aren't being met somehow, I think this is a perfect opportunity for us to skip to the first topic that we have here, because this stuff wasn't even topic. But I think the lesson to be learned is be supportive, not as far as that stuff goes. And I mean, at the end of the day, you know what? Do whatever you want. Just don't be jerks about it on social media. And the reason being is because when something like that gets put on social media, so social media is like the cesspit, like the echo room of doom. Like, you put something in there and it's like playing telephone, where one person will read it and they will read it in however the way they want to read it, or they will purposefully twist it into however they want to read it. And they will then pass on whatever they've now created into the next person, and it just gets like, it just keeps getting blown in there like this until it turns into an amalgamation of bull honky. I couldn't think of a better word.
Bull honky?
Bull honky.
Somehow that sounds even worse.
But anyway, exactly. It's like when somebody says, it's exactly like what I'm saying. I couldn't come up with a word, so I tried to make up a word, and it was awful. It's social media in a nutshell right there. But anyway.
That was definitely not a perfectly cromulent word.
Nope. But anyway, it was announced yesterday night by the savior of the FGC himself, Lord Spooky, that Spooky will no longer be doing the NLBC Online tournaments. Now, my gut instinct was like, dang, Spooky's not streaming for the FGC anymore, right? And this is that social media stuff, right? Like, I saw that announcement and was like, dang, Spooky's out of the FGC. It's over. We're all gonna not have good streams anymore. That wasn't what was said, and I have to kick myself for having a knee-jerk reaction. I feel like there's connection between anyway. So all it came down to was Spooky has decided that he had enough. He was running basically 5 events online for the past 2 years, right? It's like 108 next level battle circuits online. I think it's about 2 years worth. He's been kind of like helping this out, or like making this stuff happen. And at the end of the day, like, Steve, you and I, like, to pull back the curtain a little bit, Steve, you and I are struggling just to show up here once a week to make a talk show. Spooky has been doing 5 events on a weekly basis for 2 years, right? This is a hardworking man here, and his staff as well. So it gets to a point where, you've done something for, like, enough time where you get to a phase where you feel like you have to do it. And then once you get past that phase, you get to a phase where you feel like you don't want to do it. So from my understanding, it feels like Spooky has reached that part and he wants to go spend his time more wisely. And I don't think that anybody should be upset at that decision. I don't think there's anything wrong with that decision. And I'm sure I'm joined by everybody in the entire FGC when we say, we wish you the best, Lord Spooky. With that said, he's still going to be doing an NLBC offline when that starts going. He's still going to be doing. He streamed today and he kind of like shared his thoughts and he welcomed conversation, which again is like amazing, right? He's like the person who keeps it the realist, as it were. And Hold Back the Block has a documentary on Spooky called Stay Free. Go watch it, so you get to see like how he came to be Lord Spooky.
Actually, let me do this.
While you're doing that, this was all brought up by social media, right? Where yesterday, a Texas player, Toy, who was in, what was the season of SFL he was in? Was that season 2? Along with Tommy Two Step and everybody, was trying to hop into NLBC Online, right? We've seen Twisted Rivera on there. We've seen Brian F., people who are not in the East Coast, play in NLBC Online, and he tried to hop in. And ultimately, he was told no. Nobody from Texas can join in with the exception of a few players. And that, as somebody, I understand. It's one of those things where this is just a bad situation that nobody has thought of before that was going to happen. But ultimately, Spooky's NLBC tournaments, they decided to keep anybody outside of the East Coast or like a certain area out to keep connections the best they can be for Street Fighter V only. They allowed nationwide competition for Guilty Gear Strive because Strive network or netcode works. So Toy's response to hearing that was to take it to Twitter, right? And as usual, Toy posted the conversation on social media, and everybody then formed their own opinion about what happened, and it turned into a cluster truck, if you will, from there. And at the end of the day, TOing sucks, right? I don't think that's a secret. TOing sucks. It's one of those things that you do it for the love of the community, and you do it for the love of, for the love of the game, or you do it because you feel like you have to, right? And you're getting to the point where you feel like you don't want to do it anymore. So, that, among other things that were happening already, it just culminated into the announcement that Spooky was done with NLBC Online. And there's been a lot of finger pointing, man. I've been talking a lot. I'm sorry. This happened yesterday. So it's a lot of emotions to process, a lot of information to process. There's been a lot of people pointing fingers. I think one of the things that I found the weirdest was, there's the Formula One standings again. One of the things I found the weirdest is it turned into everybody from Texas is whiny. It's like what kind of leap, right? And it also turned into, Team Spooky's team sucks or whatever, right? It just turned into this whole thing that it shouldn't have, and it didn't need to. And I think if it was something that would have been worked out in private, maybe we could have avoided this entire thing. But at the end of the day, here we are. Spooky has decided to stop the online stuff. I hope I hope we get to see more of his stuff. He said he has been talking to Chris Seg at 10-0, so hopefully we'll get to see him in other in-person tournaments. It sucks, right? Because NLBC Online has been kind of holding the FGC together. Not just New York, right? Like, since it is online, they spread out a little bit. But here, that's where we are. I just want to, before I let you speak, Steve, I'm so sorry. I started going to tournaments in Philly, right? So I got to see Spooky work a lot, and that dude is like a bottomless pit of effort. It's ridiculously inspiring to see. So the fact that he's going to get some rest and he's going to get to chill out a little bit, I think is good for everybody in the FGC and for Spooky himself, right? So nothing but respect for Lord Spooky. This situation kind of sucked. Even when he was talking about it in his stream, he was like, yeah, this situation sucks because I could see it, how they feel from their side, and I know how I feel from my side. So, like, there was, like, he was literally trying to explain it. It's like, yeah, it sucks, but the connection's bad. Street Fighter V netcode sucks when you're trying to play somebody from Texas to New York. It's bad. We tried to avoid it, and I didn't know what to do, right? So, yeah, anyway, I'm going to shut the hell up now. Because I can talk about this for an hour and say nothing. So, Steve, what are your thoughts on the end of the online NLBC?
This is, like you touched on, one of those situations where both sides have a point. Those two Texas players that you mentioned were invited for NLBC 100 as a special event. And they were allowed to continue to participate because their connections were not adversely affecting the tournament. Now, this is one of those things where management, I've been in management in a few different industries, and each manager has their difference of opinion when you talk about when you make an exception for someone. Some people say you take care of the person in front of you and you satisfy them and you move on. And there's some who say, well, if you make the exception for one, you got to be ready to make the exception for everybody. And this is that situation. If you're a player from Texas and you find out two other people from Texas are allowed to play and you're not, you've got, if you're the organizer, you do have to be able to justify that to some degree. Yes, it is your tournament. You can let in whoever you want. You can exclude whoever you want. But you do have to be able to justify to your potential competitors, to the people who want to sign up, the people who want to watch, why these two people are so special compared to everybody else. In terms of connection, I get it. I absolutely do. But with the way netcode works, there are going to be some connections that are good. There are going to be some connections that are bad. There are going to be some connections that are good on a Tuesday, bad on a Wednesday. There are going to be some connections that are good at 3:30 p.m., bad at 3:31, and then excellent at 3:32. Whenever you get into anything that can be viewed as favoritism, it's a recipe for disaster. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's what happened here, but it can at least be viewed as such. And when you are able to take a complaint to the larger world in moments through Twitter or through Facebook or through Instagram, through WhatsApp, through Tinder, through Hot or Not. Is Hot or Not still a thing?
I mean, I know I love complaining about FGC events on Tinder.
That's where I've made all my complaints. I go to Hot or Not, just say, this tournament did not run on time. 8% hot. Which somehow it was a higher score than what I got when I was on there.
Yeah.
But anyway.
I didn't even get on there, so I'm at a 0, Steve.
Well, or you're at 100.
That's a 0.
You know,
Let's be real here, Steve. It's a 0.
That's Schrodinger's profile right there. You are both hot and not simultaneously.
I just am.
But, also in terms of, regardless of the reasoning behind the decision, Spooky being the hardest working man in the FGC, it's a little bit of a meme, but it's not that far from the truth. He is someone who absolutely has put his, he's stretched himself so thin at times to put on shows, to put on streams. And he absolutely deserves to take care of his mental health. He absolutely deserves to take care of his physical health, just like anybody else. So the idea of it coming to an end is, I feel, was a bit inevitable. This may have been the straw that broke the camel's back, and not necessarily the only cause for it. But either way, everyone deserves to do whatever makes them happy. And he absolutely deserves the opportunity to do something that he gets more enjoyment out of than running a weekly tournament.
Yeah. There's one other thing I do want to touch on, and it is that a lot of people then started dogpiling on one of Spooky's staff, which was, I believe it was Min. And for those of you that don't know Min or haven't met Min, Min is like one of like the TOs that runs a lot of the tournaments that you like in the East Coast. I've seen him work Big E tournaments. I've seen him every time I've gone to NLBC. He's been there just hanging out, doing his thing, making sure everything runs. And the stuff, when he runs stuff, beautiful. Running online stuff, as we've discussed on this show many times, completely a worse beast than running an offline tournament. So a lot of people were complaining that he didn't provide enough of a reason to kick people out, or didn't provide enough of a reason for things to be the way they are. Could you imagine running a 200-person online tournament and then finding the time to tell someone like why one person was picked over the other? Like, I can't, right? He's busy putting out like all the 80 billion fires that are happening to do anything.
I get that. I absolutely get that. I also see the other side of that conversation.
Right.
Where if you're someone who's in the tournament and you get disqualified for a reason that you're not sure of, you're not going to have a great experience with that. Being a TO, being an event organizer, especially for something like this, is so difficult because you're working in an organizational sense, you're working in a customer service sense, and you're doing it for free.
Yep.
In most cases, even if you're getting paid, it's not necessarily enough to be considered a job.
Right.
So, you're getting more, I don't want to call it abuse in this situation, but you're getting a lot of stuff thrown at you, especially considering what that job might fetch in the open market. If you said, hey, here's the job, how much would you accept per hour to do it?
Yeah. Look, I just think it's one of those things where through the magic of social media, all empathy and sympathy were completely thrown out the window, right? Because it's one of those things where, yes, this is a situation all around, right? This is a very, very situation. It's nobody's fault except Capcom because of their bad netcode.
They're just catching strays 6 years after the fact.
Oh, man. But
like, even Ono's just sitting there in a completely different company, and all of a sudden, The hell was that?
Also, you doing that just reminded me that, like, Min, a dead eye with a bottle of water. I don't know if you guys remember that video of Arturo talking to Min, and Min throwing a water bottle square at Arturo's face, smacked him. It was awesome. It's over at Base Monster, I'm sure. But all this to go back to this. These online tournaments were awesome. Everybody loved watching them, right? Everybody loved competing in them, except for Street Fighter V. And
people like playing Street Fighter V.
True. I think the online experience is not as good as people want it to be, especially compared to something like Strive that's come out. And I think at the end of the day, maybe that's what caused this entire thing. I'm kidding. So it sucks that this was a situation that arose out of it. At the end of the day, look, that was Spooky's tournament. That was Min's tournament. At the end of the day, I don't think anybody's owed an explanation. It is nice to get one. Sure, it is nice to be given one. But at the end of the day, it's like, look, they're trying to run their stuff. Something's like I don't know. It's their ball at the end of the day. It's their ball. They could take it home and end the game for everybody. Much like how Capcom can say, hey, sign this agreement to run your weeklies, you dang jerks, and now give us money.
More strays.
It sucks. This entire situation sucks. I feel for both sides. At the end of the day, I'm happy that Spooky is getting to take some time to kind of relax, go back to like the semblance of less stressful life. You can go to his Twitter at Team Spooky on Twitter. He has a twitlonger where he goes over all this. He also had a stream earlier this afternoon where he talked a lot about it. He welcomed open conversation, which I thought was really cool. Like, you don't see that nowadays, where he's like, "Yeah, anybody from Texas, like, tell me what you think. Tell me how you're feeling. Let's talk it out." Right? That's squashing the beef right there. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Spooky. I doubt he remembers this, but
I just linked that tweet longer.
Thank you. I doubt Spooky remembers this, but before the month that I moved to Texas, or like the month before I moved to Texas, I got to go to my last NEC in Philly, which was NEC 2014. Since for my first tournament, I bought Spooky a gin and tonic because I was really nervous. I didn't know who to talk to, and I was just standing next to the bar at the same hotel, oddly enough. And Spooky came up to the bar, so I bought him a drink. I bought him a bottle of Bombay gin, right? Because I bought him a gin and tonic first, so I bought him a bottle of Bombay gin. Some hit me in the parking lot, and I dropped the bottle, and they wouldn't give me another one. And I went up and I tried to tell Spooky this, that I bought him a bottle of gin, but it broke because some hit me with a car. But anyway, after all that was said and done, I was like, yeah, I'm moving. I'm kind of not the happiest about it, but you know. And he comes back with me with like the wisest advice I think I have ever heard, or not even like the wisest advice, but like the wisest mentality I think I've ever heard. He goes, just because you're moving away now doesn't mean you won't be back here again, and it doesn't mean that we won't see each other again, mostly because he travels a lot. So just focus on your new beginnings and we'll catch each other in the next one. I'm like, that's the wisest thing I've ever heard in my life. So I owe a lot to Spooky. I think we all owe a lot to Spooky. And I can't wait to see like what kind of crazy shenanigans he comes up with next, both for NLBC and for the stuff he's going to be working with in 10-0. So big round of applause to Spooky from myself and from, I'm sure, many others. Steve, any final thoughts?
No, but I do like that you included 10-0 because that's a nice segue into the next topic, which is we still have online tournaments doing big numbers. Talk to me about this.
Yeah, so came out this week or I think it was last week, they announced ICFC, Intercontinental Fighting Championships. A series of online tournaments run by Tenno Media is coming back. The Tekken version of it is coming back. The Tekken version of it came back, and the U.S. portion of the Tekken tournaments were yesterday. Steve, when was the last time we heard anything from Bandai Namco regarding Tekken?
In terms of like Tekken World Tour?
Tekken World Tour, support for the game, anything. Literally anything.
It's been a little bit. It's been just a little bit.
Was the last thing we heard from Tekken the Tekken World Tour 2021 finals?
Well, the regional finals from the first week of January.
Yep.
Yeah, that we haven't heard anything in terms of 2022 support, or like a 2022 tour, I should say. We haven't heard anything about updates. We're assuming there's nothing coming in terms of new characters or development, or we actually broke the.
Oh yeah, I'll fix it up while you're talking. Go for it.
So, but yeah, that's it's most of that mantle for Tekken has fallen onto groups like ICFC and the other online organizers that have continued to give venues for this game to be in the spotlight.
Now, here's the thing. I don't know if you guys recall this or not, but I believe it was the very beginning of 2021, or maybe the very beginning of 2020. I think it was 2021, because I think I remember Sharpie being on the show. I did a sleuthing segment in which we found out what secret project Harada was working on, because he announced that he was working on a secret project. And if you recall, Steve, I announced through the breadcrumbs that we've picked up that Harada was working on Elden Ring. And lo and behold, it was confirmed a couple weeks ago when people were making Elden Ring mods for Tekken that Harada came out and tweeted saying, yes, I worked on Elden Ring. Yes, this is cool. Now stop it. Because people keep thinking it's real. Especially because they're both a Bandai Namco property. So, with Lord Harada being busy with Elden Ring, which, by the way, great game if you guys haven't gotten a chance to play it. There hasn't been anything for Tekken. So there hasn't been like any communication from the developers. There hasn't been like any like what's coming down the line. Even at the developer roundtable, like they announced Tekken 7 costumes for Virtua Fighter characters. So there's been nothing. And this past week, with ICFC's first tournament return, they have broken records, entrant records, for ICFC, both for Europe and North America, with about 200 entries in the America tournament, and I think they got up to about 300 for the Europe entrants. So the fact that they're breaking entrant records with no developer support shows that the community, Steve, the fighting game community for Tekken is still a strong one, and everybody's hungry to play. I unfortunately didn't get to watch ICFC, but as you recall, by the way, this is one of those things where each region tournament streams on a different channel from someone in the community, right? So I think the Japan tournaments get streamed at Majin Obama's channel. The USA or the North America tournaments are in Level Up Your Game, which is Rip's channel. So like again, like it's one of those situations where like the entire community gets bolstered because everybody gets a piece of the cake.
By the way, 237 for ICFC Europe.
Nice. Yeah, so breaking entrant records, amazing tournaments, I'm sure, right? I think it's hard to not have an amazing Tekken tournament. all without developer support. I think this is one of those things where it's like, wow, and like we tend to forget that sometimes we feel like we're so beholden to developer support, and then something like this happens. It's like, all right, we're in charge here. If we like something, we're gonna do it. So big ups to ICFC for the big numbers. Big ups to the Tekken community for still being hungry. I can't wait to go back and watch some of the stuff from the tournament that I didn't get a chance to yet. And yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about that because, you know, Tekken's not the only game that hasn't had like much being talked about as far as like the near future goes. And also like developer support in a way. So much like Smash, much like Marvel vs. Capcom, there's a very like great community behind all these games. And it all comes down to people being hungry to play and getting the opportunity to do so. Steve and I are aggressively nodding.
You said it so beautifully. I don't really have a whole lot to add to that. You know, I'm just happy to see people still excited to play the game. You know, Tekken's one of those games that doesn't have the best netcode. You know, and it is on the older side. So it doesn't have that anything new and shiny to bring players in. But it's just people passionate about the game that are still playing. As long as you have people who want to play the game, no game is ever going to be dead.
Word. What was it? What was the house in Game of Thrones that said, "What is dead may never die," or something like that?
I have no idea because I don't watch Game of Thrones. I never did. I watched like 2 episodes of it, and then that's it.
Any hoozle.
I'm exposing myself. I'm exposing myself on that one.
Big ups to ICFC and the crew. No, I'm super happy to see them. So see them succeed and see everybody getting so hungry to play again. Makes me all the more excited for upcoming tournaments such as Combo Breaker.
Which is coming up quick.
Yeah, Steve, we got to start getting ready.
We'll talk about that this week. There's going to be... I feel like there's going... I don't know if it's been confirmed yet. I'm guessing there's going to be some sort of U.S. versus EU team exhibition there. Because there has been a whole lot of trash talk going both ways.
Yeah. There's apparently been... I don't know if you saw this, but apparently a crew from the West Coast started calling out some people from the Midwest, and they've been having some back and forths for Street Fighter V. And I think it's going to come down to a culmination at...
Combo Breaker?
Yeah. Sorry, I got distracted by the WrestleMania 38 results scrolling by.
You're just having way too much fun with that. Let's have the fun, because once we move on from this topic, we get a little more serious.
Yeah. Look, I watched WrestleMania for the first time in, I think, maybe 12 years. And I got to tell you, seeing Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of give a stunner to McMahon was...
That was a work of art. That was... He's 78. Cut him some slack.
Look, I'm not saying what he did was good or bad, but I'm just saying seeing that try to happen was like, it felt good, right? It was like, man, I'm home. Except for that Brock Lesnar fight at the end, it was kind of weird. Not gonna lie. I am sad I missed out on the Johnny Knoxville fight just because I saw a couple of clips here and there that just looked like Tom and Jerry.
Do you have Peacock?
No.
Sign up for a week. I think they have a week trial.
Okay.
Sign up for it. Go watch it. It was everything you would expect and then some. It was like, mwah. like the entire show was entertaining. Like I'm not gonna get into the week to week programming stuff, but those 2 nights were really, really entertaining. It was just from top to bottom, just a whole lot of fun.
Speaking of top to bottom being a whole lot of fun, Blue has resubscribed for 42 months. Thank you. Thank you, Blue. The man,
Three
the
and a
myth, the
half
legend.
years. 3.5 years.
Yeah. Blue is a founder. He's got the first badge. Right? Is that what it
Nope,
is?
nope. No, that's a 2+ year badge.
No, he's got like the when he talks in chat, it says first. It's a founder because he was like one of the
No,
first 10.
no.
Blue, say something in chat, you dingus. Oh, dang it, I'm wrong. Never mind, he's not. But you know what he is? He's a gentleman and a scholar. Now go follow
That
his.
he is.
Now go follow his Animate News Twitter.
Yeah, AFGC News.
But anyway, Steve, we could talk about wrestling all we want.
Okay.
Any other day of the week because we gotta get to some business here.
We do. Some big business.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about Saudi Arabia, shall we? They
Sorry.
they have come up a couple of times on this show. They came up in February when they when the Crown Prince's charity made investments in a couple of gaming companies. And we talked about them a little earlier in November when they announced that they had purchased a third of SNK shares and had an agreement in place to purchase another 17.7% of the company shares to take their total ownership to slightly over half of the company. It has recently come to light, however, that they've gone slightly more than half. Uh, let's take a look at what happened. So, back in November, as I said, the MISK Foundation, which is the charity operated by Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, they did buy 33.33% of SNK's shares, so a third of the company, through one of their subsidiaries, the Electronic Gaming Development Company. They also announced that they were planning to purchase another 17.7% of the company to take their total share to 51. The way they did this, though, is through what is called a tender offer. And what a tender offer is, in short, they state that they're going to make an offer to all shareholders to purchase somewhere between a minimum number of shares and a maximum number of shares at a set price. And anyone who wants to take them up on it, go for it. And as long as they meet their minimum, they will buy the shares up to the maximum. So they set the minimum at 17.7%, which is the amount they agreed to pay. They set the maximum at 66.7%, which is all of the remaining shares. So they were ready to buy every outstanding share if they wanted to sell. The price they offered was a little over 37,000 Korean won per share, which at this, as of this morning, converted out to a little over $30 American. At that time, shares were trading at 21,000 won, or a little over $17 a share. So that is a very significant premium. And they got a whole lot of takers to the tune of 62.8% of the company's total shares. through that period. So as of February 15th, the 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 Crown Prince's Foundation owns 96% of SNK. Their total purchase of that wave of shares was about $143 million worth of investment. So what that means is that they have nearly complete control of the company, and they did. And in their tender offer, they did say that their plan was to delist the company so that eventually SNK will no longer be a publicly traded company. Um, what that means is that they pretty much have control of the company. They own 96% of it. Um, it's always, yeah. I'll let you jump in because thoughts get very, very tricky when you talk about government investment like this.
Oof. Man, I don't know what to think, to be completely honest with you. I mean, look, um the fact that they bought shares at double the price, I mean, it's kind of hard to say no, right? Especially if you're someone who has like 5 grand of SNK stocks, and all of a sudden somebody comes in and be like, "Hey, we'll give you 10 for them, 10K to your bank for no reason." Like, I take it. Um, yeah, Dragonzord says it best. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. Especially because we live in a country where there's been a lot of very messed up things that we've done. Uh,
That's true.
every place has skeletons in their closet, man. However, go ahead.
To that end, well, here you finish your point there.
Because what I was gonna say is, it feels like an investment this aggressive with the intent to then delist the company so it's no longer publicly tradable. Why? Right? Like, what is the point? If it's something as simple as, oh, they just want to take control of the company so that they can then develop games and say their games developed in Saudi Arabia, okay. I like
Which
video
is,
games. I'll play them.
which is which is almost certainly what they're going to be doing.
Yeah.
That's a fairly common thing to do when you have what's called any sort of takeover attempt, whether it be
Mm-hmm.
hostile or not. To your point, though, uh, I certainly come from this with a Western point of view, an American point of view. So, what the average Saudi person thinks of the U.S. is probably going to be different from what the average American thinks of the U.S. I will say that there is a difference, at least in my mind, between being owned by an American person or an American company and being owned by the American government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Obviously, companies like NetherRealm. NetherRealm is an American company. It's owned by an American corporation, but there is still a level of separation between that and if Joe Biden for whatever reason said I'm spending 200 million to buy NetherRealm, or Donald Trump came back and said I'm spending 200, 4 years ago said I'm buying NetherRealm for 200 million. That would be a very, the reaction from a Saudi person or any sort of Middle Eastern person or any other person in the world would be very, very different. And that's sort of how I feel. It's
Yeah.
at this point, you're signing off. It's very, very difficult to separate the bad things that have been done by that government And again, there's a difference between a nation's people and a nation's government.
Mm-hmm.
And the company, if the company is owned by that government.
Yeah. I mean, there's also the difference too in the way their government is structured, right? Because that one person is the government.
Yeah, and Kostarax, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, brings up the case of Roman Abramovich, who is the owner of Chelsea Football Club,
Mm-hmm.
who was invested heavily in that team, and now is required to sell it because he was one of the people who was sanctioned due to his ties to the Russian government.
Yep.
The
Same
sale
thing.
has not gone through yet, but they're and that sort of brings up the issue of when you're talking about this amount of money, there aren't a whole lot of people who are willing to drop that level of cash on anything that don't have some sort of skeletons in their closet. Not to say all those skeletons are equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at all of the potential owners for Chelsea, there are people from nations that are looking to, that haven't done great things and are tied with the government. There are people who have become independently wealthy, but they have done some very sketchy things to gain that wealth. There really isn't, the point of there is no ethical consumption in capitalism. That's true to an extent. It's a matter of how ethical do you wish to be?
Mm-hmm.
Where is your line? And everybody gets to draw that line in a different spot. So I feel like we're going to have, at least in the West, a few people who are going to draw the line and say SNK is no longer something they wish to support anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, get your physical copies of King of Fighters 15 now. But yeah, and to your point, Steve, where everybody has that line in the sand that they can draw, right, for ethical consumption. There's also everybody has a price to move that line back just a little bit further. But yeah,
And it's sort of, and like I said, there's there are levels of separation and dilution between you as a consumer and the people who own the products you buy.
mm-hmm.
So are people going to feel personally responsible if the Saudi government does something if they buy KOF 15 DLC? Some might, a lot probably won't. True. And I don't know if it's. This is one of those things where it feels like it's above my pay grade.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it totally is. It's above our pay grade, Steve.
But that doesn't stop us from having opinions.
Right.
Because we are guys on the internet, and that's what we do.
That's right.
Grr. God, so weird. There's a woman who likes me for some reason. I don't understand it.
Steve,
I do things like that, and I'm still able to find a partner who looks at me and says, yep, that guy does it for me.
Steve, don't kink shame.
Oh, man. Be in so much trouble when she hears this.
It'll be fine. Just say it's my fault. Right? That's how relationships work. Just blame it on somebody who's not in the relationship.
That's probably not going to work when, she's hanging out right behind me while I'm editing the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm playing it through to make sure there's no... I can't say that my voice sounds like you. I can't pull that off.
I mean, you can say it. You can physically say it. It's
I
not going to
could.
go over well, but you can say
It
it.
would not be wise. It
Yes.
would be, of all the dumb decisions I've made,
Yes.
that would be one of the dumber ones.
Now, Steve, speaking of dumb, I've been.
Let's get dumb. Let's get dumb.
I've been. So we're gonna get to our last segment here. Now, here's the thing, everybody. I've been on TikTok way too much, right? For those of you that aren't on TikTok, TikTok is something. We're gonna go down a rabbit hole, but it's not the usual rabbit hole. Well, just bear with me here. TikTok is very good at showing you stuff that you watch, not necessarily stuff that you want to see, stuff that you watch. So I've been kind of in the TikTok vortex of like seeing a bunch of like crazy racist tirades in public by Karens, right? And that's kind of been like the big thing, right? Social media has been on this trend of like showing Karen meltdowns in public. So, I don't know if you guys used to watch NLBC like way back when with Lee Chung, Tinchi, and those guys. But Lee Chung used to go down a bit where he would say, Tinchi the type of ninja too, and then would say things that are like mildly irritating, right? Like Tinchi the type of ninja to leave a 2-cent tip on a $10 check. Something like that, right? That got me thinking. Steve, Karen in the fighting game of Street Fighter V is a ridiculously rich white woman who beats up on Birdie, right? Like Birdie's her training partner. She beats up on Birdie all day, and then instead of paying him for the training, she just gives him food. That's pretty bad, Steve. That's very bad. That's extremely bad. And that got me thinking. What type of Karen is Karen?
Wow, this is happening. This is happening.
So we're gonna dissect and see what type of Karen Karen is, and
Oh dear God.
we're going to try to find out if Karen was to have a meltdown in public. How and why would it happen?
I want you to understand how much I'm blocking my face right now. I just want that noted for the record.
Oh, man.
Can we talk about this Photoshop job, though?
Steve, look, in my own defense,
You did not match up the neck, but you did trim off just a little bit of that hat line to make it look like the hat works.
now hold up. Steve, I'm gonna pull up something. Where is it? 7:26 p.m., Steve. 7:26 p.m. is when we decided to do this. I was still at work, and I still managed to this out before the show. Now, here's the situation. We're going to dissect and see, based on some assumptions, of course, what type of Karen is Karen. So, first,
We're not playing the clips, are we?
no, we're not playing the clips for our sake and yours.
Thank you.
First, there's this Karen who was known as the Karen of SoCal because she would go up to Asian Americans and go on racist tirades about how Asian Americans don't deserve to be here. Is Karen this type of Karen?
She's half Japanese.
Exactly.
No.
Exactly. Karen is not this type of Karen. So that Karen is not this type of Karen. We can equivocally say Karen is not this type of Karen. Let's move on to the next Karen.
How many of these are there?
There's a couple.
Okay.
Now, there's this Karen, who is someone who is slightly inconvenienced by a larger problem and decides to then inconvenience everybody dealing with this larger problem. The meme here says, I would like to speak to the manager of coronavirus. Is this Karen the type of Karen that is Karen?
I would disagree. Karin is able to handle her own problems.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on the patch, she is able to handle her problems very, very well. Or at least somewhat well. So I would say, no, this is not her.
Okay. All right. I would agree, and I think the chat agrees as well. Chat, I believe the blocker grab emotes are usable if you're a follower.
And BOV grab, yes.
Yeah. You should be able to use them as a follower. You don't have to be subscribed. So let us know what you think. Grab for if Karen is this type of Karen. Block if Karen is not this type of Karen. Let's move on to the next one. This Karen pulled the gun on a bunch of people protesting. Karen... We're not going to... I could go into the details of this because the protesters were encroaching on her house. However, that stuff was... It was so 2020 late at this point. Is Karen the type of Karen to pull a gun on a crowd?
No. She's got so many strong moves. She does not need any weaponry.
Yes.
Also, I don't think this is a Karen. I'll get into that later. So, but no.
Yeah. Okay, so everybody agrees Karen is not this type of Karen. If there was Shadowloo soldiers, what? She would beat... so that's what I'm saying. She beats people up instead of pulling guns on them. That's fine. Let's move on to the next Karen. This Karen called the cops on a person of color while mishandling her dog over photographs that did not involve her. Right? So it's one of those people that she saw a person of color doing something and then decided to call the cops and be a jerk about it. I'm oversimplifying these, but we've all seen the videos. Is Karen the type of Karen to call the cops on a person of color?
I do not see her doing anything to mishandle any animals. I do not see her mishandling people in terms of race. I just feel like she mishandles people in terms of tears. So I would say no. I would say no.
All right. I agree as well. So Karen is not this type of Karen. Now, this next one, we're going to lightning round. Because this is a threefer. We're going to do a 3-for-1.
A threefer.
We have 3 Karens on the screen. One Karen assumed that her neighbor, who was a person of color painting Black Lives Matter on his fence, was not her neighbor. The Karen in the middle called the cops on, I believe it was a barbecue at a park. And the last Karen, all the way over there by Steve, is a Karen who called the cops on a child selling lemonade because they didn't have permit to sell lemonade. Now, lightning round. Assuming a person of color is not your neighbor, is Karen that type of Karen?
No.
No? All across the board?
No. Across the board, no. I don't think she's going to... Karen's yard is so big that she wouldn't even be able to see her fence. So,
True.
not the first. Secondly, she's not going to call anyone herself. She'll have someone else do it if there is a problem. I don't think she's going to care. So I don't think she's the second or the third.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I don't think any of these apply.
Mm-hmm. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. All right. Then last but not least, and we may not be able to get to the bottom of this today, which just means we'll have to have more segments of what type of Karen is Karen. All right. Last one for today. Is Karen the type of Karen that Elon Musk is? Where they have unlimited money and they buy out small towns in Texas and say they won't make things bad, but do.
No. Just no. Let's not compare anyone to Elon Musk right now. Let's just set him all the way to the side.
I mean,
the way to the side.
When you beat someone in Karen's stage to the right side, you put them on a rocket and they go flying, Steve.
I'm still not sold. Okay. There is one more. I put it in the drive. Are you able to add that? It should be listed Steve's pick.
Okay. All right.
So here, like, if I'm going to get real for a second, I feel like the phrase Karen has been overused to the point where it loses all meaning.
Mm-hmm.
I think that it should only apply in situations where a person is making a complaint and being overly aggressive in their complaint to a person in a position of service that is either the fault of the complainer or something out of the service person's control.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of stuff that just gets chalked up as, oh, that's a total Karen thing. That isn't. That's a completely different issue. So I don't think she's a Karen at all.
Okay.
I think she's a Courtney. Right here. If you remember the show, as told by Ginger, there is a character called Courtney Grippling who was rich, but she didn't think she didn't treat others poorly intentionally. She saw common people sort of like the way someone sees an animal in the zoo, with curiosity, trying to make, our lives aren't so different, you and I. Maybe someday we can share a common bond. There is sort of an aloofness there in that connection. I think that is the way I would go. I don't think she's a Karen. I think she's totally a Courtney.
I don't remember it. I think I don't. Have I ever watched an episode of As Told by Ginger?
You know what? You have homework tonight.
I'm not going to do it.
Simple as that. If you don't, you're going to get an F.
That's fine. D is for degree, they say.
It's on Paramount Plus, I believe.
I don't have Paramount Plus.
You can sign up for a 1-month trial, and you can watch soccer with that 1-month trial.
Steve, you know what else people can do for a month?
What?
And that is use their Twitch Prime on this channel. Because Twitch Prime, it allows you to get one free subscription on Twitch per month, and it is free if you have Amazon Prime. And let's be honest, if you're here and your Twitch Prime is available, you're going to forget about it. So don't let this free money go to waste. Don't let Papa Bezos get away with free money. Please use your Twitch Prime subscription on Best of 5. You can click subscribe, and if it says subscribe for free, you should be able to use it. Thanks. Anyway, that's the end of that segment.
That's the end of all the segments.
That's the end of all the segments. Look, I'm happy. I'm happy that we got to delve into what type of Karen is Karen. And it turns out she's not a Karen at all. I think that's a great conclusion for us to come to, Steve. So thank you for getting us there. Speaking of getting us there, that also got us to the end of the show. Thank God. I kid.
Look, of all the episodes we've ever done, this was one of them.
Look, honestly, Steve, I'm proud of this episode. This was a big mixed grab of shenanigans. There were good times where we talked about how ICFC numbers are doing amazingly well. There are bad times when we talked about
anything else,
spooky leaving, or the Saudi Arabian government binding 96% of SNK. Even just saying that out loud hurts. But at the end of the day, we've answered an important question here, Steve, and I'm happy that we did. So with all that said, Beats is in the chat. I was trying to figure out how to say his name without saying his name. I haven't seen you around in a while. Good to see you. With all that said, thanks everybody for joining us and hanging out. This has been a fun one. My name is Ilan. You can follow me at ILAN121 on the Twitters. Say my name. Beats, we can only say your name if you subscribe. Sorry, man. Them's the rules. This has been Steve, Ace King Offsuit Jerk. You can follow him at Ace King Offsuit on the Twitters. Please, don't forget, this will be on YouTube. So for those of you that are here on the Twitches or anywhere else this winds up, such as your favorite SoundCloud, your favorite podcast avenues, please hit us up on YouTube. If we get to what's it, Steve? If we get to like 1,000 subscribers, I think we can start monetizing on YouTube, something like that.
I forget if it's 500 or 1,000. I think it's 1,000.
Let's say 1,000. If we get to 1,000 subscribers on the YouTubes, we get to monetize it, and more monetization equals more money to spend on things like going to Combo Breaker and doing a show from there. Hey, Tap2GG saying I'm having a rough time ending the show. Maybe I don't want to end the show. Huh? Did you ever think about that? Did you ever think about what I want and what I need?
Well, do you think about what I want and what I need?
There's pizza in my oven. I'm holding everybody hostage at this point. Let's get out of here. Follow it. Best of V show on the YouTube, Best of V show on the Twitter, Best of V show on podcast stuff on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, everything else. I think I got everything right, Steve. Is there anything I'm missing?
Good night, Canada.
There we go.